whatever you put up, but it doesn't, which is
Well,
interesting.
maybe you don't want it to.
And that's true. Lord only knows what could be on that screen. Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's my options chart. Everyone can see it now, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
just pulled up whatever option. This is a January 31, 35 call. So it'll move like the underlying, but not always identical. So I literally will do the same thing on the options chart if I need to add. So if it comes here, well, let's say I get in the trade right here, okay? Then I will literally put a stop. And TC2000 has this little thing where I right click and I literally put a 5% trailing stop that, it'll be somewhere in this area, let's say.
5% of the option price.
Yes. And with Amazon, that's super, super tight. What that typically means is $100 to $200 loss, which is nothing
Mm-hmm.
on an Amazon
Mm-hmm.
option.
Mm-hmm.
And really, if my trade is the proper entry and the proper trade, like it would be here, it's going to go. I don't need to worry about if it stops me out, that means I was wrong, and I'd rather take a small loss. I mean, 9 times out of 10 by doing it this way, either I had a crappy entry and I didn't belong and I should have stopped out and re-entered anyway, or it's a bad trade.
Mm-hmm. I
And this is a more recent thing because of the strat for me. I used to never put actual stops in. I would always do the mental stops, but that caused me two different problems. One was I'd have my hand on the mouse, like getting ready to stop out, and I would see something happen on the chart, or I'd look at the option and I'd freak out, and before I knew it, I hit stop, and then I'm out of a good trade, and I'm like, this has got to stop. Like, I'm never going to make money. And that's when I started using a stop the minute I get in, and it's been a flipping game changer for me because it takes that fear out. Because the problem is if you don't have a predefined stop, for me, I'm not saying this is for everyone, but for me, if I don't have a predefined stop and it starts to go against me, I'm like, oh, it's still fine. Oh, it's this. And I end up taking a bigger loss, or because I don't have a predefined stop, I have my hand on the mouse and then my hand disconnects from my brain and it does something I don't want it to do. And so this has stopped me personally from having my hand on the mouse and screwing myself up. I just take my hand off the mouse and I watch the chart. And it's been a game changer.
Oh, excellent. And you're doing at the money calls, right?
Yeah, at
When
the
you're
money calls
entering,
and
right?
puts. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, and then
And
you're just
what's
gonna
the
trade
profit?
that same. You're gonna trade that same strike if you're gonna add to it, right?
Correct. Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
exactly what
You
I
don't want to
do.
manage 2 to 3 different strikes at the
No,
same.
no, I just add to my. What were you going to say, Ray?
I was going to say, what's the name of the stop that you use?
I use. It's in my videos. I want to say it's just a. I think it just says stop. It's not trailing stop. It's just like a stop, a regular stop, the 5% stop. That's all it is. And it. So
I'm going
what
to try
happens? Yeah, so what it'll do, it'll immediately show a line like it does here. And what happens is if price goes and closes below that line, it triggers a market order. So that means,
Ooh.
typically if it says $150 loss, I know it's going to be closer to 200. That's just because it's
Yeah,
a
with
market
what it
order.
is, with the gamma spike against you on a
Yeah.
FANG stop.
Yep.
Yeah.
But even still, because if you use a stop limit and it doesn't hit your limit, then you're
Oh
screwed
boy.
even more,
Yeah, that's right.
So that's why I've using such a tight stop, because I know 9 times out of 10 that loss is going to be no bigger than 200s, even with the gamma spike.
And you're gonna trail that by pivots, or you have defined
So sometimes I will
percentages.
trail it and sometimes I won't. And I'm trying to think. I can't think off the. I'll have to pay attention the next time I'm trading as to when I will trail it. Because there's been a couple times I've trailed it and it's actually mess me up because I'm trying to think. There was an example the other day, and I'm just mind blanking. But out of the gate, it's typically not trailing. I will just do a stop. Um, Another thing I've done, and I've experimented with, so take this with a grain of salt. Sometimes I will put a stop limit like at the mid price to get into a trade, and then I'll do, let's say I'll buy one Amazon option at the market, because most of the time at the open I'm using market orders, and people think you're nuts but I've traded this way on Amazon for well over a year. And if I'm using a limit, it's typically for an ad,
Yeah,
because
I do the same.
yeah, I mean, if 99 times out of 10, because I'm trading in the morning when price is moving fast, if I use a limit order, I ain't gonna get in. It's
You're gonna
just
get
not.
skipped, right? Like the spread's typically like $1, right?
Well, most of the time I get into Amazon for 50 cents. But
50 cents. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they can be up to, there were times, remember last spring when everything was nuts and volatility, the spreads were $5. But
Oh,
I'm telling you, because price moves so fast, that $5 spread on Amazon was like a penny spread on SPY. That's how quickly, if the trade was going your way, it would. Because people freak out about Amazon's spreads. But in all honesty, Roku and Zoom and Square, their spreads to me are a lot more difficult to deal with at times than Amazon's, because Amazon is so institutionally owned. It tends to trade pretty cleanly. Like not always, but generally, if it's moving in a direction, it's going to move swift and quick and overcome that spread. Roku and Square and those guys can fake you out, or at least me. Maybe I just don't know them as well. A lot more often, and
oh yeah.
I forget. I mean, the spreads on Zoom and Square can be just as much as Amazon, and it doesn't move nearly as cleanly or quickly. And that's just my opinion. I'm not. That's been my experience. So,
And you never swing your weeklies, right? You'll close at end of day.
most of the time, because unless there's just something amazing on the chart that I'm like, there's no way this thing ain't going up. Because right now, like the past few months, to me, there's so many gaps in so many directions that I feel, unless there's just an amazing setup, we're playing a game of odds. The odds, a lot of times, based on what news events come out overnight, have just been so crazy. But that's not to say if you have the right setup and the right stock. I mean, you look at like energy, the XLE, Walgreens, Boots Alliance, and CVS and Rite Aid, and some of these charts that are way down at the bottom of their range, even some of the pot stocks. And you go out a couple months, I mean, it doesn't really matter what news events. They've been so beaten up. How would you not make some money, on the right answer on
Exactly.
those? So it's just been harder to me to. What I really regret not doing is not swinging Tesla, because I saw the swing.
Well, of course.
I saw it, and then I'm like, oh, it moved too far, and then it moved in. I'm like, okay, and the next triangle layout, I'm getting in. Like right here, I saw this. I'm like, I'm buying it. Did I do it? No. Like I mean, I'm so mad at myself on that one.
I mean, if we were just position traders, well, we